Have you ever wondered why every great empire, no matter how powerful, advanced, or wealthy, always collapses? Why did Rome fall after dominating the Mediterranean for centuries? How did mighty Spain, flush with New World silver, lose its preeminence? Why did Britain, whose empire once spanned a quarter of the globe, fade into the background? And what does all of this mean for the present day? There is a pattern hidden in history. It is not a conspiracy theory. It is not guesswork. It is a cycle that repeats so consistently that once you recognize it, you can forecast the rise and fall of empires as reliably as the changing of the seasons. This cycle has already played out across thousands of years, from the Persians and the Romans to Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. And today, unmistakable signs are appearing once again. In the next several minutes, we will walk through the 7-stage collapse pattern. We will explore how empires rise through discipline and unity, how they expand through exploration and trade, how they bask in prosperity, how they slide into overconfidence, how they decay under their own weight, how crises expose their weaknesses, and how they ultimately fall. We will weave stories from history, economics, and human psychology to show why no power is immune, and why understanding this pattern is a key to understanding the future. But before we begin, ask yourself one question. If every great empire eventually declines, what makes us think ours will be different? Keep that question in mind as we journey through the past, and then turn our gaze to the present. You may start to see our world in a very different light. Every empire begins with something small and intensely powerful: discipline, innovation, and shared purpose. Rome started as a tiny city-state amid feuding kingdoms. What set it apart was an almost obsessive commitment to military organization and civic duty. Roman legions built roads and forts, not for glory, but because logistics and discipline won wars. Over time, this focus produced victory after victory and attracted allies. Medieval Spain was initially a patchwork of kingdoms locked in Reconquista, yet the unification of Castile and Aragon and a powerful partnership between crown and church unleashed a wave of exploration. Navigators and conquistadores fanned out across the Atlantic, risking their lives to chart unknown seas. Similarly, Britain's rise began not with wealth, but with shipbuilding techniques, coal mining, and a culture that celebrated invention. The United States rose on railroads, steel, electricity, and later computing. In each case, people worked harder than they had to, for a future they could barely imagine. During this phase, corruption is minimal. Citizens embrace sacrifice, and the economy is built on production rather than consumption. The mindset is forward-looking. Failure is common, but so is resilience. The empire's values revolve around innovation, discipline, and unity. This stage typically lasts a few generations. It is the shortest phase, yet it lays a foundation for everything to come. A key hook. This is the only stage where societies build more than they consume. After stage 1, that balance never returns. Success creates momentum, and momentum fuels expansion. In stage 2, an empire's newfound strength translates into outward growth. Rome's legions spread across 3 continents, establishing colonies from Gaul to North Africa and the Middle East. Spain sailed west and south, colonizing vast territories in the Americas and Asia. Britain's Royal Navy secured trade routes from Canada to India to Australia. The United States established military bases, economic alliances, and cultural influence that spanned the globe. Expansion feels unstoppable. Wealth pours in. The capital fills with foreign luxuries. Merchants grow rich and cities swell. New territories bring resources, markets, and strategic depth. Expansion also carries a hidden cost: complexity. Every province adds administrative costs, military obligations, and logistical challenges. Each new ally demands favors. The empire becomes dependent on the very system it built, and that system grows ever more complicated. Even in this phase, micro-hooks keep the viewer's curiosity alive. Expansion always looks like strength, but it is also the beginning of dependency. As Rome learned, conquering Gaul was easy compared with holding it. As Spain learned, shipping silver from the New World created massive wealth and massive inflation. As Britain learned, ruling India was profitable until the cost of controlling a subcontinent outstripped the benefits. As the United States is learning, Maintaining global dominance requires trillions of dollars and constant military presence on every continent. Prosperity. The third stage is the Golden Age. It is the period everyone remembers and romanticizes. For Rome, it was a Pax Romana, a 2-century period of peace and wealth. For Spain, it was a Siglo de Oro, when art, literature, and architecture flourished. For Britain, it was a Victorian era, railways, telegraphs, imperial exhibitions, and scientific breakthroughs. For the U.S., it was a post-World War II boom, when the dollar became the world's reserve currency and American brands dominated global markets. During prosperity, the empire enjoys high living standards, rapid scientific and cultural advancement, stable currency and growing trade, a sense of destiny and national pride. Art and philosophy flourish. Science accelerates. Life expectancy rises. The middle class expands. People begin to believe the good times will last forever. Yet prosperity carries a hidden danger: complacency. Citizens forget the sacrifices that built the empire. Governments start to overspend, taking on debt to fund wars, welfare, or lavish building projects. Inequality begins to widen, but most dismiss it as the price of progress. Prosperity is a peak. It feels like permanence, but history shows it is the moment when the seeds of decline are planted. Spain's prosperity was fueled by New World silver. According to historians, the flood of bullion increased the money supplies so dramatically that prices in Western Europe rose roughly sixfold between the 16th and 17th centuries. Content reference, oocyte. 0 index equals 0. Wealth flowed through Spain, boosting prices domestically and spreading across Europe via the country's balance of payments deficits and piracy. Content reference, oocyte. 1 index equals 1. Spanish nobles spent lavishly, and the economy grew dependent on inflows of silver rather than productive industry. It looked like a golden age until inflation eroded purchasing power and Spain's debts multiplied. Overconfidence. Stage 4 is the most deceptive phase. From the outside, the empire seems unshakable. Its buildings are magnificent, its military formidable, its currency trusted, its culture admired. But beneath the facade, cracks begin to form. The costs of empire outpace the benefits. Governments borrow heavily, assuming their power guarantees repayment. Social divisions widen as elites defend their privileges, and ordinary people struggle with rising prices. Politicians pass short-term fixes instead of addressing underlying problems. Rome's overconfidence manifested in currency debasement to fund massive military campaigns and public works. Emperors reduced the silver content of the denarius. By the time of Gallienus, the purity of silver coins had dropped to about 5%. Content reference, oocyte. 2, index equals 2. The government struck more coins from less silver, temporarily solving fiscal problems but setting off hyperinflation. Soldiers demanded higher wages to keep up with prices. Taxes increased, burdening farmers and merchants. Eventually, the economy seized up. Inflation became so severe that people resorted to barter as the currency lost its meaning. Content reference, oocyte. 3, index equals 3. What looked like innovation, minting more money, was actually self-destruction. Spain's overconfidence took a different form. Flush with silver from the Americas, Spanish nobles and monarchs ignored domestic industry. They bought goods from abroad and paid with bullion. When silver shipments declined, the economy had little productive capacity to fall back on. Meanwhile, inflation from the price revolution impoverished workers. Britain's overconfidence was visible in the late 19th century when it assumed the pound sterling would always be the world's reserve currency and that industrial dominance would last forever. The cost of maintaining far-flung colonies and fighting costly wars eventually outstripped the revenues of empire. The United States has its own overconfidence signals: record-breaking national debt, unrestrained military spending, a financial system relying on cheap money, and an assumption that the dollar will always be king. None of these guarantee collapse tomorrow, but they mirror behavior seen in every past empire. Overconfidence always precedes decline. Hashtag stage 5, decay. Decay is a long, slow erosion. It is not dramatic. It does not make headlines. It happens quietly over decades. Trust in institutions declines. Infrastructure wears out. People become politically polarized. The economy shifts from production to consumption. Debt grows faster than the economy. Corruption becomes normalized. The society loses its sense of common purpose. In Rome, decay appeared as political chaos, civil wars and constant assassinations. Emperors lasted months. Outlying provinces were neglected. Farmers abandoned their land under the burden of taxes. In Britain, decay set in after the First World War. The costs of global dominance exhausted the treasury. Industrial production slipped as competitors like Germany and the United States rose. Debt skyrocketed. In the Soviet Union, decay manifested as chronic shortages, technological stagnation, and a cynical populace that no longer believed official propaganda. Decay often coincides with currency problems. Rome's debased denarius triggered hyperinflation. Content reference oocyte. 4 index equals 4. Spain's reliance on American silver led to price revolution and economic stagnation. Content reference oocyte. 5 index equals 5. Today, many nations face similar pressures. Persistent deficits, soaring debt, money printing to cover shortfalls, and increasing reliance on speculation rather than production. None of this guarantees collapse, but it sets the stage, a micro hook to maintain attention. Decay can last decades, and during this time empires often feel like they have all the time in the world. They don't. Decay is the breeding ground for crisis. Hashtag stage 6 crisis. Crisis is the moment the empire realizes it can no longer sustain itself. It is the shock that compresses decades of decay into months of chaos. Crisis can take many forms: financial collapse, currency devaluation, revolution, civil war, foreign invasion, or a combination of these. In Rome, repeated invasions by Goths and Vandals, coupled with economic chaos, shattered central authority. Spain suffered crisis when the flow of silver dried up, its armada was defeated, and its debts piled up. Britain's crisis came in the form of 2 world wars that drained its finances and forced it to pass the torch to the United States. The Soviet Union's crisis compressed decades of stagnation into a 900-day collapse that saw the country dissolve without a major war. In a crisis, trust evaporates. Markets panic. Governments impose emergency measures. Sometimes states seize private assets or default on debt. The military may fracture as soldiers and commanders no longer trust their leaders. People take to the streets. In most crises, the triggers are self-inflicted. Unsustainable debts, misguided wars, failed currency reforms. Crisis is the tipping point between decline and collapse, the fall. The final stage is the fall. Dominance is lost. The empire's currency ceases to be the global standard. Its influence wanes. Its military retreats. Its political system undergoes radical transformation or implodes. In Rome's case, the Western Empire fragmented into Germanic kingdoms. In Spain's case, the crown's authority shrank to a second-tier power. Britain handed the mantle of world leadership to the United States. The Soviet Union dissolved into 15 independent states. The fall is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet and prolonged. Sometimes it is sudden, but it always marks the end of one world order and the beginning of another. The ruins of past empires remind us that nothing is permanent. Columns topple. Thrones are abandoned. Statues lie shattered. Content reference oocyte. 6. Index equals 6. Yet life goes on. People adapt. New powers rise. The cycle begins anew. Historians and economists who study long cycles believe that many Western powers, particularly the United States, are somewhere between stage 5, decay, and stage 6, crisis. Indicators include record national debt, constant deficit spending, political polarization, decaying infrastructure, deindustrialization, rising social inequality, currency challenges from rival powers, and an overextended military. The signs do not mean collapse tomorrow. They mean the system is under strain. The future will be shaped by whether leaders take the hard road of reform or continue down the easy road of spending and denial. The collapse pattern does not tell us the exact date or trigger of the next crisis. It tells us why collapse happens, because the cost of maintaining empire grows larger than the wealth it produces. When complexity becomes too expensive, the system must reset. Sometimes that reset is painful. Sometimes it is orderly. In every case, it leads to a new distribution of power. Conclusion. So what does this all mean? First, it means that no nation or currency is immune to history. Great powers rise because they are disciplined, united, and innovative. They decline when they grow complacent, overconfident, and divided. They fall when crises expose their weaknesses. Second, it means that by studying the past, we can anticipate the future. We can see early warning signs: ballooning debt, debased currency, political polarization, overextended militaries, and economies that produce less than they consume. Finally, it means that collapse is not the end of the world. It is a transformation. When one empire falls, another rises. The challenge is to recognize the cycle early enough to adapt rather than react. If you want to understand what lies ahead, if you want to decode the signals that shape our future, keep watching, keep learning, and keep questioning. History may not repeat itself word for word, but it rhymes in structure, rhythm, and consequence. Once you see the pattern, you'll never unsee it. The next decade will tell us whether we have learned from the past or whether we will repeat it.